Good morning, and thank you for joining the Maryland Chamber Foundation as we bring you this very important webinar today. We are very excited to be joined by several guests. First and foremost, we have Stephen Umberger. He is the District Director for the U.S. Small Business Administration. We're also joined by John Bratsakis, President and CEO of the MD DC Credit Union, and Mindy Lehman, Senior Vice President of Government Relations and Communications with the Maryland Bankers Association. As always, we're also joined by Ashley Duckman, the Maryland Chamber of Commerce's Vice President of Government Affairs. Ashley will be hosting the question and answer period as we get towards the end of today's presentation. Just a few housekeeping items for everyone today. You are currently muted and will be in listen-only mode during the presentation. However, we welcome you to add questions to this event. And while many of you did submit questions ahead of time, which we are grateful for, we do encourage you to click on the symbol that you see here on your screen and type in your question for our speakers today. Ashley will utilize those questions in the conversation at the end. If we are not able to get to your question, please do not hesitate to reach out to the Maryland Chamber at the email on your screen. And of course, today's webinar is being recorded and will be posted onto the Maryland Chamber of Commerce's COVID-19 resources page, as well as our YouTube channel. Speaking of our COVID-19 resources page, we continue to bring you the most up-to-date information from many of our business partners, as well as other partners across the state. Two things I'd like to draw your attention to. One, we recently, as of this week, posted Renew Maryland initiative. It was put together in conjunction with our COVID-19 workforce group. This is a collection of policy proposals that will assist Maryland in overcoming the economic impact of COVID-19 and, of course, looking to rebuild our economy. We also have on there the Safe Workplace. It's a list of best practices and baselines for reopening Maryland. And it's really just a nice set of guidelines for our employers as we think about reopening in the next couple of weeks. With that, I would like to introduce you all to Stephen Umberger. He is the District Director in the Baltimore office and is responsible for delivering and management of the U.S. Small Business Administration's financial, business development, and government contracting programs throughout the state, with the exception of Prince George's and Montgomery counties. Stephen has over 25 years with the SBA and works diligently to manage the agency's outreach in Maryland. Stephen, thank you so much for being here and welcome. Please don't forget to unmute yourself. Thank you.
Oh, I just did. I did.
That's okay.
Well, thank you, Whitney. Great to be here. We all know we have, I have a few slides that we're going to roll through during the show, the presentation here, or my discussion, and they're mainly for informational purposes. So they'll have websites and contact information, things like that. A nice little takeaway that you won't have to write and make copious notes throughout. But again, thank you, Whitney, for having me on today. It's a pleasure to be here with everyone. And we all know that our country has never experienced any type of disaster of this magnitude. And I just want you to know that we in your district office and SBA nationally, we're all working tirelessly to assist small businesses across the country who are seeking economic relief. We've been in the news a lot lately, so I'll start with program update. We've received an unprecedented volume of applications for each of the assistance programs that have been made available through the CARES Act. With respect to the Paycheck Protection Program, SBA processed 14 years worth of SBA guaranteed loans in a period of 14 days. We typically in our district run around a little over 600 loans a year. 230 million, I believe it was roughly last year. And from the numbers you're going to hear in a minute, that is just minuscule in comparison. As of Thursday, April 16th, when the initial appropriation lapsed, over 1.6 million small businesses had received loans valued at a total of $342 billion, roughly. In Maryland alone, we had authorized 26,068 loans valued at a total of over $6.5 billion. So when you look at our small state, Maryland, times the 50, you'll see that out of the $357 billion that was authorized, we got more than our fair share, in my opinion. Congress approved the second round of funding, and the program reopened on Monday, April 27th. The numbers for PPP round 2, I'll call it, through May 7th, yesterday, SBA had processed an additional 2.5 million loans to small businesses across the country, totaled another $185 billion. Big numbers, lots of folks that are getting assistance, and we're real excited and proud that we could be part of it. The last number available as of May 1st, going back a few days, 34,732 Maryland small businesses had been approved for $3.2 billion in round 2 so far. There remains roughly $100 billion in the program. There was a lot of talk about large lenders coming in with hundreds of thousands of loans, this, that, and the other thing. But despite the fact that they have done that on occasion, there's still $100 billion left, and we want to encourage any small business that is still on the fence post or thinking about it. It's a program that you should look into seriously and take advantage of it, because there's plenty of time left, plenty of money left. So April was a busy month for us, and we continue to make progress here in the early stages of May. SBA, our agency, has been able to create many new lending partnerships. We've brought on numerous credit unions, numerous online lenders that traditionally haven't participated in the SBA Guaranteed Lending Program. In addition to the large national and regional lenders, local community banks have risen to the occasion and are rallying to support local small businesses and entrepreneurs. To date, just an amazing number, over 350 individual lenders have participated in CARES Act lending in our state. Now, those from all across the country and throughout our state, we have roughly 80 Maryland-based lenders, but you see that folks around the country are helping small businesses in Maryland, and we're really glad to see that. So let me just take a couple minutes to go through. Could you flip the slide, please? The Paycheck Protection Program itself. Just a brief overview, maybe a reminder for some, maybe a refresher, maybe new information. But the loan is designed to provide direct incentive for small business to keep workers on the payroll. SBA will forgive a portion of the loan if the employees are kept on the payroll for 8 weeks, and the money can be used for payroll, rent, mortgage interest, or utilities, payroll expenses. Not more than 25% of the loan could be used for expenses other than the payroll. No collateral is required. No personal guarantees are required. There'll be no fees. Neither the government nor the lender will charge the small business any fees. Forgiveness will be based on the employer retaining or quickly rehiring employees and maintaining salary levels. Forgiveness will be reduced if full-time headcount declines or if salaries and wages decrease. The loan has a maturity of 2 years and an interest rate of 1%. So outside of the forgiveness, the remainder will be amortized over at that point it'll be a 22-month period at 1% interest. Any small business with less than 500 employees, including sole proprietorships and independent contractors, self-employed persons, along with private nonprofits, 501c3 and 501c19 veteran organizations that have been affected by the coronavirus COVID-19 are eligible. And again, applications are being accepted through any existing SBA lender, any federally insured depository institution, and participating non-bank lenders. The one thing we do encourage, and we always do this, is to make the small business owner aware that the best shot is to start with their bank of account, somebody that's familiar with you and knows your operation, knows you. Start there. In some cases, that may not be where you wind up obtaining the funding, but like I said, there's just about every bank in America is participating in this. And on the slide, you have a email address, Maryland MD SBA loan questions at sba.gov. Any questions that you might have after today, you can send it there, and one of my lender relations staff will be glad to assist. Can we go to the next slide? I'm going to talk about this a little bit just so you're interested or informed. I know that the focus today was the PPP, but we also have the Economic Injury Disaster Loan EIDL program and the EIDL Advance. I have to go back to May 1st again. They're the latest numbers I have, but as of May 1st, these are direct loans from SBA. And as of May 1st, roughly 20,000 Marylands had received assistance, total over $150 million. Their working capital loans, proceeds can be used to pay fixed expense, payroll, accounts payable, other bills that cannot be paid because of the pandemic impact. They can't be used to refinance existing debt. Low interest long-term loans up to $2 million. The first payment on the loan is deferred for 12 months. They carry an interest rate of 3.75%, and the maximum term is 30 years. So this is another option that you may be interested in. Currently, the portal's closed to all but agricultural and agricultural-related businesses, but when it reopens, that is something that you may want to consider. Right now, we're catching up on the backlog. Being a direct SBA program, even though we have a network of processing and servicing centers and all our IT portals and things like that, it was just overwhelmed immediately, and we're still playing a little bit of catch up. Part of the EIDL is that EIDL Advance, it's up to $10,000, which turns into a grant that you will select at the time you make application, and those funds will come out immediately to you. Disaster customer service at sba.gov is the email to follow up with questions on existing applications, and the 800 number takes you to a call center in Buffalo that's manned 24/7, and you can also check with them. So back a little bit about anybody that's already applied for EIDL. Your application will be processed in the order it was received. And again, if you want to try to get a status update or just find out where you are in the queue, you can email or call at the contact information provided. Next slide. Local assistance, SBA funds two main partners here. The Service Corps retired executives. They tag themselves as America's Counselors of Small Business. Volunteers, many successful retired individuals that they're giving their time back. There's others that are currently employed, but these are folks with great business guidance, wisdom, experience, expertise that are available to consult with you free of charge. And the Maryland Small Business Development Center network, that is both SCORE and Maryland SBDC are located throughout the state. You can go to the websites there and you can look up counselors in your locality, and you can also, in many cases, find some within their roster that could specifically address your needs. So right now, adhering to social distancing and the other things, requirements that we have in place, all sessions are being conducted via phone or video conference, and they could be a great resource for you if you choose to use them. And the following slide. Here we have local contact information. I suggest that or recommend that you or encourage you to follow us on Twitter at SBA_Baltimore for current updates. You have our website, that's my district office website, sba.gov/MD, our main phone number, and the other email is a national newsletter where you can find additional updates. You can also go to sba.gov, you can go to treasury.gov. Both sites have a document, frequently asked questions, that is updated daily. Actually, I say that, but I don't believe there was an update yesterday, but they have been updated daily. It's about 43 FAQs that can help you get through some of the questions you have. One thing I have to mention, and we've gone through a lot, we've started with EIDL and the Paycheck Protection Program, and the ramp up on it was enormous and the challenges were enormous. A lot of that's history now and behind us. Many of the processes and getting the lenders signed up that we went through around the clock, that's behind us now. So things are running much smoother, especially with the Paycheck Protection Program in round 2. And now we're on to what I anticipate will be a number of questions on loan forgiveness. And I just have to qualify it up front and let you know that the final guidance on forgiveness has not been issued at this point from Treasury and SBA, but I will do the best I can to address anything any questions that you have. So I want to thank again the Maryland Chamber, Mindy, or not Mindy, but everyone here today for coming, and appreciate it. Stand by for questions.
Thank you, Steve. This is Ashley Duckman from the Maryland Chamber of Commerce, and I would like to just quickly turn it over to John Bratsakis from the Maryland DC Credit Union Association for his remarks before we start taking questions.
Thank you, Ashley, and thank you for having us. Wanted to thank Steve and the SBA for all of their hard work. I just thought I would just provide a little bit of an update of some of the things credit unions have been doing. As Steve said, there's been a lot of credit unions that have been working with their communities, focusing on, small businesses like the community banks are, and everyone I think is trying to do what they can, which is why we've had several credit unions that have been jumping in that haven't done these SBA in the past, but are stepping forward to do the PPP loans. And we have some data from about 2 weeks ago. So it was just as the second phase was getting started, and we're updating these numbers. But at that time, there were over 563 businesses for about $70 million in loans that got that. So when we talk about the average loan size, being small, going to small businesses, going to small communities, that's exactly what's happening, and that's been our experience with our credit unions. And in addition to that, what we've seen is a lot of credit unions and a lot of communities, the employees of those small businesses need relief also, to almost over $800 million in other loan relief that's been done, whether it's deferments or creating new, small micro loans for people that need help, extensions on loans that they currently have. So we just continue to see that. And I think, as Steve said in a lot of his comments, the key is really for, I think, small businesses and folks to pick up the phone and contact their institution, because there's not necessarily a clean answer, that every business is different. So all of those situations and all of those things are critical. And we've heard more than a handful of stories where, small businesses have picked up the phone and gone to their institution and been able to save their business or their families and helping their employees' families. And I think that's really the story of this program, and compliments to the SBA for doing 14 years worth of loans in 2 weeks. I think that, or 3 weeks, that's pretty incredible when you think about that. While there's challenges in the system, I think if being patient and persistent is the key in this type of thing, and credit unions are stepping forward to help folks like they always have. And that's really, I think, kind of the background. And I know there's a lot of questions after that we've got, so I'll wait for that.
Thank you very much, John. And hopefully we've addressed the echo situation that we just had prior to my introduction of you. Okay, good. Now I'd like to turn it over quickly to Mindy Lehman from the Maryland Bankers Association for her opening remarks, and then we'll turn to questions. Just before I do that, Mindy, if you don't mind, thank you to those of you who are submitting questions through the portal. A lot of these are on our target list. If you do continue to have questions, please submit them through the chat feature, and we'll get to as many as we can. Thanks, Mindy.
Well, good morning. I'm Mindy Lehman with the Maryland Bankers Association. I really want to start by both thanking the SBA for their incredible efforts. I know that it was a bit of a tough start for everyone, but Steve and his team have worked just amazing hours and have accomplished some incredible things. So I really want to give a big shout out to the Small Business Administration. And I also want to thank the Chamber for this opportunity to join the webinar today, as well as all of your incredible efforts. The MBA is a member of the Chamber, as well as many of our member banks, and we so appreciate the number of resources that you all have been front and center during this entire pandemic. So I really commend you for that. And also, I echo John's comments. Maryland banks have been here for small businesses before the pandemic, and we will be here after the pandemic with an array of financial options. And John really hit it on the head, is there really is no right size for every single business. It might be a loan refinance or modification is the right step, or it might be the Paycheck Protection Program, or it might be loan payment deferrals. So really reaching out to your lender, to your banker, and reestablishing those contacts and having that candid conversation about what solution is going to be best for your individual businesses is so important. And I did want to quickly touch on the Paycheck Protection Program to give you a status from the banker's perspective. Our members have caught up with the PPP backlogs that they were experiencing. And as Steve talked about, it was a bit of a challenging rollout, both with the first round and the second round. But I think that we have largely at this point worked through those implementation challenges. What we're seeing now is that the volume has slowed considerably. And to give you some perspective on that, when the program was first rolling out, they were making about $2 to $3 billion in loans per hour. And that volume has now slowed to about $2 to $3 billion per day. As Steve said, there's still $100 billion left in the program. And lenders will continue to take applications until that funding is exhausted. So if you haven't had an opportunity to apply yet for a PPP loan and you're interested in doing so, you still have time to do that, and I encourage you to do that. Just quickly looking back at the Maryland numbers, I think Steve gave us a great overview of both the first round and the second round. And it was so interesting to me that the totals since the inception of the Paycheck Protection Program, the total number of loans that have been rolled out in Maryland are 60,800 loans totaling $9.8 billion. And in the first round, which ran from April 3rd to April 16th, the average loan amount was about $250,000. Now in that second round, we've seen that average loan amount go down to about $93,000. And we believe part of the reason for that is that sole proprietors and independent contractors are eligible for the PPP in the second round. So that's been an interesting development. And in terms of ranking, Maryland ranks 19th in the country for loans approved and 16th in total US funding for the PPP program. And just to put that into context, we're 19th in the country in terms of population. So in terms of the dollar amounts of loan, we're outpacing that. So that's some good news. Right now, the banking industry is very focused on what Steve mentioned earlier, which is the loan forgiveness section of it. And we're very anxious for the guidance on the loan forgiveness piece to come out. This is a new process for both borrowers and lenders, so we'll be working through that together. Banks have already started on building out forgiveness calculators, but we can't finalize those tools until the guidance is available on that, and we know what those final terms are. So we're working with our congressional delegation, really urging the guidance to be issued as quickly as possible, because we know that is top of mind for the businesses as well. And finally, I guess the last thing I would say is, if you have any questions about the Paycheck Protection Program, reach out to your lender with those questions. But the facts that Steve also mentioned, the Treasury SBA facts, which are updated on a rolling basis on their website, are really quite helpful, and I find them very user-friendly as well. So that's a great resource tool. So with that, I'll turn it back to you, Ashley.
Thank you very much, Mindy. Very much appreciate the update and the opening remarks from all of you, and very much appreciate all of you being with us. Let's start with forgiveness, because we did get the most questions about it. And I know, Steve, during your remarks, and Mindy as well, we know that the official guidance has not yet been released. But let me roll through some of the questions regarding forgiveness that we got and have a discussion about it. Mostly folks are just wanting a review on how forgiveness might work. If you know you might not be able to hit the 75% payroll cost, they want to know about the procedure for accounting documentation of payroll expenses for forgiveness. Can we just have a discussion about, to the extent that you're able, expanding on what we know about forgiveness to this point while we wait for Treasury guidance?
This is Steve. I think we can have a little discussion about that. And when we talk about documentation of forgiveness, you were required to produce certain documents at the loan origination point, and the guidance on that was very specific, and you've been through that process with payroll records, or possibly records from a payroll service that you had provided, salaries, wages, commissions, tips, benefits. Documentation was provided on mortgage interest, existing mortgages, leases and rent payments, things like that. So I can't imagine that when the guidance does come out, that documentation wise, it's going to be much different than what was required at the front end, except more specific to that 8-week period. Does anyone else have anything they might add? Okay.
Great. Thank you, Steve. Hearing none. A question about extensions. Are we expecting any extensions in the amount of time that we can use the PPP, since Maryland is not yet open for business? Is this something that Congress is considering, extending the length of time to reach that 75% threshold? And are they considering lowering the threshold?
The only thing that I've heard as far as possible congressional action on this is that it's been mentioned in a couple different webinars, congressional, either representative or senators, that they've heard the concerns of the constituents regarding the 8-week forgiveness period. Currently, it starts at the date of the initial disbursement of the loan proceeds. Obviously, there are certain industries and certain businesses, and even maybe specific businesses, that it just isn't the right fit for them. The caterer, I use it as an example, had April, May scheduled, had to cancel those events, but they got their funds already dispersed, and then June, July is in question, all that. So how do we build flexibility into that process? So I believe Congress is, if not already, will be addressing those concerns.
Terrific, thank you. Let's see, a question here regarding payroll itself. Does it matter if payroll paid as cash or accrual basis? Is it days worked or check dates that must be in the covered period? And I think this gets to something that you all have already addressed, which is, will more guidance be released, possibly extending the covered period?
Exactly, that's one I could not speculate to, or would not. I will wait till the Biden guidance is issued.
Sure, thank you. Let's see. A question here that we've gotten several times regarding bonuses. Can we use PPP funds to give bonuses to our employees? Some employees are up for raises with evaluations being due. And can we give them their raises during this 8-week period?
Yes, you can.
Okay. Let's see what else. This is a question that's come up on a number of fronts as well. And it may not be one that anyone on this webinar can answer, but I'm going to pose it anyway. What if we have employees that do not want to return to work because they are making more money from unemployment? How is that issue to be addressed? Do you have any thoughts?
It's come up several times. It's come up many times, and the other question that came up was, could I lay employees off after the 8-week period? These are all business decisions that need to be made by the business owner. If you cannot get your regular employees back because the compensation and the benefits of unemployment are more attractive to them, you're going to have to look elsewhere. The challenge with employees that are offered jobs that are on unemployment, you'd have to check with the state in particular, but my understanding is you can't necessarily turn down a reasonable offer of employment if you're on unemployment.
Thank you very much. A specific question here. As far as qualified forgivable expenses, transportation is listed. Are you able to elaborate on that? What is meant by transportation?
Only to the extent that it could be a fuel cost for a company that needs to provide either transportation services or ship supplies, delivery costs, that kind of a thing. John, do you have any comment on that? Help me out.
That part I don't. That's one of those areas on most of the folks that we've talked to have been using primarily the funds for payroll and rent. Transportation hasn't been one of the questions that we've gotten. Okay. From what we've heard.
Thanks to you both. We've gotten this question several times as well with respect to receiving support from both the EIDL and the PPP programs. This person asks, I received $2,000 from the EIDL program and PPP money. Will that $2,000 be deducted from what is forgivable from the PPP loan?
Okay, so they got the $2,000 from the EIDL advance.
Yes.
That will be deducted from the forgiveness portion.
Okay. Thank you. This is a little bit specific, and I know I provided this one to you all in advance. They're asking if you can provide more clarity on the statement in IRS FAQ number 31. Specifically, before submitting a PPP application, all borrowers, should review carefully the required certification that, quote, current economic uncertainty makes this loan request necessary to support the ongoing operations of the applicant. Borrowers must make this certification in good faith, taking into account their current business activity and their ability to access other sources of liquidity sufficient to support their ongoing operations. So I think they're looking for if you have any more clarity on that statement being made by the IRS in FAQ number 31. Might be specific to answer.
The only clarity to it is it's stated as it is, and if you have been affected by the coronavirus, if your business has been affected by the current economic uncertainty, makes this loan request necessary to support the ongoing operations of the applicant. I think that one is, that part's pretty clear. As far as it comes to other sources of liquidity, there has been a waiver of the credit elsewhere rule, which previously would require use of liquid assets or other available liquidity to be used before you would qualify for an SBA loan. But this is The liquidity question is a case-by-case determination, and you need to work with your lender to determine if that's going to be a challenge for you or not.
Terrific, thanks. And I don't know, Mindy or John, if you had any additional context there that you wanted to provide, but if not, we can move on.
No, I really don't.
Okay, perfect. A question here from one of our participants. If a business received funds from the second round of PPP funding and they had access to other sources of loans, such as a line of credit, do they need to give the loan back?
At this point, without knowing a lot more about that particular business, I can't answer that. It depends on what, I mean, there most likely was a normal use. There was a reason for that line of credit, and depending on what business it is, what kind of, what that line of credit's used for, that may not necessarily be considered other liquidity that would be required to be used. So if it was used for inventory, for working capital, to support contracts that come and go versus payroll. You know, the whole intent of the program is to bring people back to sustain payrolls and that sort of thing. So it's going to have to be a determination that's made on a case-by-case basis.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, we had questions here about employees and full-time employees that come and go during this period. A specific question, for example, we had one employee that left the company during the counted FTE time period, and it was unrelated to COVID-19. Do we have to replace this position if we didn't intend to refill it? I don't know if that's maybe too specific.
I don't think we have guidance on that at this point.
Okay, thank you. See what else we can comb through here. Let's see, a question here again related to FTEs. Should ordinarily full-time employees be compensated for reduced hours and then be made whole? If so, how would we account for the difference?
You know, I can't answer that question. That's a business owner's decision to make in a normal course of business, and you'll have to either consult with your lender or wait for final guidance to be issued. That is something that it's not a question that I can answer.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's see. A question about, this is another one that we received pretty commonly, is hazard pay, i.e. increased wages for employees physically coming to work during the pandemic included in payroll costs and thus forgivable? Sort of also along the line of the bonus question.
Yes,
okay.
That would be something that would be acceptable.
Perfect. This was the line of credit question. Let me go to my chat feature here and see what else we have coming in. Again, for those of you who are on the line that wish to have specific questions answered, please submit them through the chat feature and we will go through as many as we can. A question here, I think we may have already touched on it, but it's one that's come through now 3 times. If you aren't able to make the 75% payroll rules, can you still get forgiveness on 25%? Or are we still waiting for Treasury guidance on that?
I can't, yeah, we're gonna have to wait for guidance. I just wanted to let everybody know a couple things. One, the SBA has guaranteed 100% of these loans to the lender. So the lenders are going to be held harmless regardless in all this. So that in itself is a huge sign of how flexible this program is. That's nothing like anything that ever has happened before. And regarding the specific questions, many of these have to do with how a business operates on a day-to-day basis. As long as it's reasonable and prudent, and not an obvious abuse or a fraud, you're going to be made good on it. We just need to get the guidance so that we can understand what the particulars of our substantiating documentation and things like that to answer the questions. I expect it to be out soon. Soon's a relative word, but I know folks are working on it
Perfect.
around the clock pretty much to get it out as soon as possible. I'm going to share with them and have shared with them the challenges that locally we have in trying to assist you. We're here to help, and we're not always getting the support that we need from the folks that are the policymakers in a timely fashion to help you. So I apologize that there's so much vagary in some of these answers, but that's just where we are today.
No, I appreciate that, Stephen. And to the extent that, I know Mindy mentioned this in her remarks, to the extent that we can assist with making specific requests of our delegation and urging them to use their leverage to try to put some pressure on Treasury to get this guidance out, we would love to collaborate. And I know that we have done so with the bankers and the Credit Union Association on other issues. So we will continue at the Chamber to support in that effort and look forward to partnering with you in that regard. I did have a question come in about
Ashley, could I just make a couple comments?
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, thank you. I think this has been such a helpful dialogue, and I really appreciate the comments that you just made, Ashley. And it occurred to me, this is such a terrific list of questions, and I think it so underscores the critical need for the guidance. And they're fantastic questions that the businesses are presenting, and I just wondered if the Chamber and the people on the call would be open to it. I think it'd be really powerful if we could share these questions with Senators Van Hollen and Senators Cardin, who have been so close to this issue. As you just said, we've worked with them very collaboratively with both the Maryland DC Credit Union and the Chamber, pushing the concerns of the small businesses as we hear them, and then the questions we're getting from the banking side of it from our clients. And I think that would be really meaningful, because it's a great list of very thoughtful questions that I think is going to just really just elevate the need for this guidance. And I know that they've been pushing hard for this as well. And the other thing I wanted to mention is I do have, if people are interested in it, we have very good relationships with our peer bankers association across the country. And the Wisconsin Bankers Association has developed a very helpful toolkit for small business borrowers that they have shared with us, and we're free to share that with others. And this toolkit is intended to help provide borrowers with information and calculations related to the forgiveness stage of the PPP. So it's a pretty good calculator. Of course, it's not final, but I'd be happy to share that with the Chamber. And you can in turn share that with the folks on the call if you think that would be valuable.
Absolutely, Mindy. We appreciate that, as always, your partnership, and would love to be able to share that with our membership.
Ashley,
yes.
Can I make one comment too?
Please.
So just to build on what Mindy said, and one of the things that we've seen, especially with the delegation and with Senator Cardin being so crucial and critical in the whole PPP development with Senator Rubio, was that when, we've, in one of our meetings and one of our town halls, he was very clear that he wanted to know if there's any issues that are going on. And that's what our delegation has said. And I know some of the institutions have been very vocal, and they've turned those right over to the SBA. And I can't see, not that we know this for sure, but if, as Steve had said, if anything is going to go against the intent of the program, there's a high likelihood that there would be, a lot of accountability from Congress to make sure that that doesn't happen, that it doesn't stray from its intent. And that's one of the things for businesses, I think, while there might be some skepticism to that, they've been, what we've seen, and especially with our delegation, is very open to hearing the experiences that small businesses are having with this process. One, to help improve it, but two, to make sure that it's working the way it was intended. So I would recommend that not only do we share these questions as Mindy suggested, but that we just, if you have concerns or you have issues as a small business, to make sure the SBA understands that. But if Congress is doing anything that isn't in the intent of what was created and what the program was for, I know our delegation will definitely fight for that.
Very much appreciate that, John. I think at this stage, I mean, a lot of the, we had a lot of questions roll in advance, and many of the ones that are rolling in through our chat feature are very similar, and it speaks to Mindy's point about they're very good and they're very thoughtful, and they largely dovetail in the same categories, but most of them will require an answer via the Treasury guidance that we're anticipating. So I very much look forward to working with the folks on this group to aggregate the questions and concerns that you all have conveyed to me, our participants on the line, and make sure that we get those to our delegation so we can urge them to get us this Treasury guidance sooner than later. With that, I think probably based on our timeline here, I will pause and see if any of our presenters have any final closing thoughts. I think we kind of just did that, but if there are any thoughts or final comments you'd like to make, we'll pause here for that.
Yeah, just a couple thoughts, Ashley. It's our understanding that there's another round of the CARES Act in the works, and that they're working on the language for that this week and probably next. So a piece of that may be additional funding for the PPP or additional funding for financial relief for small businesses. So we're going to be advocating hard for that. And we have been, as I know the Chamber and the Maryland DC Credit Union have also been really encouraging the maximum of flexibility for the business owners as possible through this program. It's everything that the folks on the call are dealing with is just unprecedented, and the more flexibility that we can have in the program, the better that it's going to be for everyone. So I just wanted to assure people on the call that the bankers, the credit unions, we're fighting hard for that as well to get as much flexibility as we can. So we're hopeful for another round of funding. And again, there is still funding in the program. The Maryland Bankers Association website has a coronavirus webpage on it now that has a link to all of our member institutions. So if you need a fast link to a bank, that's a quick place to get there. And thanks so much for this, Ashley. Appreciate it.
John, Steve, any final thoughts?
I don't
Steve,
have anything
go ahead, John.
Okay, I was just going to say, I think Mindy, as Mindy said, we're all fighting to make sure that Congress is held accountable to make sure that they're helping small businesses and that they're following through. But also, just like the bankers on our website, there's a link to every credit union that operates in Maryland that you can find out what they're doing to help small businesses, but also for consumers. So we would recommend that you go there to find the relief and the help and the contact information that you need.
Thanks, John.
Okay, so this is Steve. I just want to let everybody know we're here to assist you and work with you as best we can with what we have. We think we've done some wonderful things, and we're right at the point where we need additional guidance, and any support that Mindy or John or Whitney and your organizations can bring to bear to, there's definitely flexibility needed in this program. I believe our congressional delegation is well aware and fighting for us all. When we do get information, we'll be sure to pass it along as soon as we can. And you have the contact information for SBA locally. Let us know.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Mindy. Thank you, John. As always, very much appreciate your partnership and collaboration. And we look forward to having this same group back once that Treasury guidance is issued and we can start to dive into some of these more specific questions. We look forward to having a second round of this kind of webinar so that we can dive into those details. In the meantime, for all of our participants, if you have anything that any one of our presenters or the Maryland Chamber of Commerce can do to be helpful to you, your business, please let us know via the email address that Whitney provided at the beginning of the webinar. And with that, please stay safe and well and have a good weekend.
Thank you.